All right, here's a question for you. What do theory of computation, surfing, complexity theory, and Scottish dancing all have in common? Well, easy. Mathematician Rod Downey. G'day, Rod. How are you?
G'day, John.
Hey, look, I'm aware that it's sort of probably about midnight for you, isn't it?
That's right.
You've been travelling, and
Yep.
apparently that's what mathematicians do. Where have you just been?
I've been in Germany. Well, I was in Singapore, one of my graduate students, and I was doing some work with him on the way and gave a few talks there. And then I went to Germany in a place called Schloss Dagstuhl, which means Castle Dagstuhl.
That'd be hard to say after a couple of
Absolutely.
wines, wouldn't it? But you did it very well. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great place. You go there, and people from all around the world came. Actually, I was organising this conference, and with 3 other people, and we were looking at verification of hardware for computers. So the idea here is that you get well, the idea is that you want to avoid what happened with years ago with a floating point error that cost Intel $50 million by trying to make sure that the hardware you run and the software you run doesn't break down or something, which is a good idea, right? So what you do is you invent symbolic calculus logic, and you invent an automaton and use that automaton to try and verify to see if the stuff works or not.
So you're kind of trying to check before you make it, type of thing, that it's going to be...
Well, you can even do it for industrial systems. I mean, they apply this methodology to analysing, for example, smelters. You have a smelter and you want to figure out that, well, for example, you don't want the thing to melt or something like that. So what you do is you look at the systems and you invent a symbolic calculus and you analyse this, and you see, is there a way of that the system could break down and do something bad.
Yes.
And actually this was applied, and they discovered in one particular smelter where the engineer said, no, they're fail-safe. It wasn't true. There was a particular way that if certain bad things happened, it could occur, and this was found not through human agency, but through using automated reasoning.
So these are preventative standards that physicists are looking at. And
typically you look at what are called safety properties, liveness properties. So a typical thing might be you have several processes competing for some bit of memory or something like this, and you know, you're scheduling, and you want to make sure that everyone gets their chance. I mean, you're saying, oh, you know, I want to use the igloo. You know, there's this igloo, and we all want to go into the igloo, right? I want to use it, and someone says, sorry, igloo's occupied, forget it, you know. But you want to make sure that at some stage you get your opportunity.
Yes.
That's called a liveness property.
Liveness.
Liveness.
Yeah.
Right. Liveness means that. So safety, for example, would be two people can't be using the same bit of memory at the same time, because you can imagine if it's shared memory and someone's writing to that memory.
Yeah.
You don't want someone else writing to that memory. You could be doing a transaction with some money. Yes. You don't want someone else bumping in while your credit card's like.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's called safety. Liveness means you get the opportunity to do it.
Yes.
And there are various other properties, and you can represent these by runs of automatons. So liveness would be that in an infinite run, an approximation for the finite's the infinite. An infinite run that you hit at every state which wants to be hit infinitely often.
Yeah.
So that's and you can verify this stuff with what are called Buki automaton.
So now you're starting to talk in that other language, that twilight language, that,
you know, right?
Which is interesting.
But it's what they're called.
Yes,
you know, because it was invented by a guy called Buki and an automaton.
Oh, so. There you go. Right. Well, look, so a lot of what you do sounds like it's on the edge of, or in the pure maths kind of world.
Well,
even though this is applied.
That's just straight applied.
That's all applied, but it comes from.
Right. So Buki invented this stuff in 1960.
Yes.
Right. He was looking at decision procedures for various logics.
Yeah.
And who would have ever thought they'd ever have any use, right? I mean, it's just the way it goes. I mean, you don't think that things are going to be useful, and then, you know, people are driven, I think, by. I mean, I'm driven in my investigations to understand what's going on. That's my main goal. I really, to be honest, I mean, like, it's great when things get applied, but I don't really worry about that kind of thing. I'm just interested in. I would like to understand computation and things. And I mean, another great example is fuzzy logic. Now, when I was young, I remember being told that by some sage older mathematician that fuzzy logic was mathematical pornography. which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And but like it's now what they use in Japan when you have any of these things that know when to turn the clothes off, you know, the dryers and stuff.
Yes.
They know when they've got dry. That all uses fuzzy logic circuitry. So the stuff that people said was rubbish, and said was just complete rubbish, would never have any use. And lo and behold, there you go.
So is this an ongoing debate, do you think, in maths in general? Is the people who are in areas like you are doing pure maths, is it harder to get the funding? Is it harder to get the backup to say, well, actually, this is not just sitting in a room and tapping and, you know, and may not have some use somewhere down the road?
I think you know, in New Zealand there's a lot more money available for doing outcome-based research. That's just because most of the money comes from, you know, from the taxpayer or the corporations, and they want something pretty well straight away.
Yeah.
Is the balance right? It's really the question. I think that it's rightful that you know, more money should go to sheep and wool and that kind of thing. It's, you know, farm stock effluent and all that.
Yeah.
Right, invasive species. You know, like so. This funding agency I was in, you know, we funded like invasive species of you know, rats going onto an island and tried to model that. But that's a perfectly reasonable thing to understand. But on the other hand, we're all part of a world community, and it's, you know, that's not my driver, and I think there should be some funding for that. Yeah. And who knows? Because certainly politicians don't know what's going to turn out to be useful in mathematics.
No, they're not. It's funny that.
Well, I mean, even the people on the funding agencies, they're not expert mathematicians by and large. So, yeah.
So, is there something that you're working on, a project that you're working on now that you're particularly passionate about, that you're having fun with, or that's?
Currently, so my research goes through little phases, and I had a long phase where I was looking at what's called computable algebra, which is where you try and take the standard things in mathematics, which most people think of mathematics as computational, but in fact the majority of 20th century mathematics is not computational. And you try and look at it and try and make it computational. Then I had a period where I developed a theory of complexity called parameterized complexity, which I wrote some long book for, which nearly killed me. But that was with Mike Fellows. And what we did was we were trying to understand why it is that traditional complexity theory, which is trying to understand the speed of a computation or the amount of resources you need for a computation, why it didn't really address things like you know, relational databases or an important problem, beer delivery in a city. You want to send a beer to each place, you know, to each pub in a city, and you want to do it in such a way as to do it as cheaply as possible, because, you know, you want to have a lot of money left over for more beer or something. And the question is, how do you do that? And what you try and do is develop algorithms.
Right.
And we developed a theory wherein you would associate with these things some parameter, like, you know, a city is quite a regular thing. It's not like some random jumble graph.
Ever-changing thing,
Yeah, and so what you do is we try to exploit that fact or the human mind doesn't ask a question which has more than 6 alternations of quantifying. Well, whatever it was, things that we design tend to be regular, and we try to exploit that in the complexity theory. It's actually taken off. So that was absolutely pure computer science, and now there's all these groups working, whole conferences devoted to it. So I did that until I finished writing the book, and then I was so sick of it I just couldn't face it anymore. So then I moved to another area. Now I've been doing algorithmic randomness for about 10 years. Well, since 2000 anyway. Since a conference that we organised in Kaikoura, which was good.
Oh.
So, and that's we're trying to understand what it means for something to be random.
Yes.
So I toss a coin.
Yes.
I'd be kind of suspicious if I got 100 heads in a row.
Sure.
Even though that event's just as likely as any other event.
Given that every time you flicked, the slate is wiped clean, isn't it? Doesn't matter what's happened before.
Absolutely.
It's like, here we go again.
Yeah, so we're trying to understand what it means for, because it's not really very well understood what randomness means. And so what happened was a guy called Lance Fortnow gave some lectures down in Kaikoura, and I was very excited by what I heard. And I thought, well, that seems interesting. So then I had a postdoc here called Dennis Hirschfeld, who's now a professor in Chicago. And I said, well, perhaps we should look at this. And there was some question we were asking. I thought, well, how hard can it be? And it turned out it was really hard.
Do you have to actually have a student flicking a coin for
No.
3 days to try and... That's where computers can come into it.
No. This is like, it's completely theoretical at this stage. I mean, so we were sitting there trying to understand this. And there was a certain question that someone had asked, and I thought, well, who's tried to do it? Not many, not many good people, so I'll give it a go. And so about 6 months later, we finished up solving it, and I was kind of happy.
Wow.
Yeah, some questions take a long time to solve. I mean, that's...
And this is with the use of computers?
No, most of my research doesn't really use... I've had students do things on computers, but mostly I don't use computers at all, except to send email and
Because they're just not equipped to do the sort of calculations that you need to...
I don't really do calculations, usually.
Okay.
I do... It's just, it's here and here and...
And the odd glass of wine. And
glass of wine certainly helps.
Yeah. So you've got some handle on randomness then?
Oh, I wouldn't say we have it. I mean, so certainly there's a monograph being written which is 700 pages long, or 650 pages long. So and it's all the work which has happened since then. So yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, it's a very hip term, really. It's amazing. It's one of those terms that every kid uses these days, is the term random. Everything's random.
Yeah.
So it's clearly...
If you do a math popularization, if you do a math popularization lecture, it's good to put up fractals and all that kind of, because people love that kind of stuff,
Yes. Well, look, just winding back a bit, how did you get interested in maths in the first place? What grabbed you?
Well, I mean, I guess, it's one of those things, I was always good at math. Is actually true. I mean, I was always quick at mathematics, and that was true at school. But I had a headmaster, a guy called Harry Selden, in 5th grade, 6th grade. And this was in just a one building school. It had one room for each class, and that was it. In Brisbane, a place called Rainworth. And he was a funny old bugger. And he used to come in and, he's one of he'd beat you with a cane if you were bad and all that kind of stuff. Very old-fashioned. But he did really have a love of mathematics. And he used to come in and he puts Pascal's triangle on the board. And I thought, wow, that's kind of amazing. And I went home and I remember kind of working it out. And it sounds kind of a weird thing to do, but I really liked that, and he also had a passion for poetry. So, yeah. So
there you go.
I remember there's very few lessons that I remember that I ever had at school, but he taught me a great lesson once. He said, because I remember he was talking about the hollow men and was kind of mocking it in front of us, and in retrospect, I gather he was challenging us, but. But at the end of it, I actually said, well, I actually like that. And he said, well, you should have got up and said it in class, you should be ashamed of yourself, blah, blah, blah. So, but he was a great old guy. He was in his last year of school.
I think it's often a key with things like maths or any subject, if you get the one or two key teachers that are very passionate or good at teaching it. I mean...
and know some.
Yeah.
You need it's great to have the inspiration, but it's also you can't be taught to play the fiddle by someone who can't play the violin. That's just the way it is, And this guy clearly knew some, and it was probably from a generation where, if you were smart, that you didn't. Probably genetic too for me. I mean, my dad was a bookmaker, so.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
it was all in the head, so you could have gone down that road as well,
well, my parents couldn't believe it when I decided to do a PhD, because at the time I was offered the job to manage the bar at a pub where I was working at the same time.
This is a serious advancement with decent check applied to it, I'm sure, at the time.
$200 a week.
How could you give that up, son?
That's right.
Go and play with figures.
$200 a week. And they never really, but once I started getting paid, they were happy, But that was a lot of years down the track.
So what are the great things about being a mathematician? Do you get to travel? Do you get to have fun, hang out with cool people?
I have the best job in the world. I just love it. I mean, there's great, there's being an academic is just fantastic. And also, people give me puzzles to do for fun. I hate puzzles for fun. My job is a puzzle. That's what I do. I'm sitting here and I'm doing puzzles all the time, right? So you're interacting with young people, you're teaching, young people. It keeps you kind of fairly young in your attitudes. And then if the surf comes up, as long as I don't have lectures, I'll just go and surf.
It's the complete sort of, break from or
I feel sorry for people.
To.
I hate those. Imagine working a job where you came in at 6 a.m. and I mean, one of my friends, she went through with me, and she dropped out of a PhD, and now she's a quote failure, and she was managing director for BP New Zealand or something. But and she's paid astronomical amounts of money. But on the other hand, she goes in at 6 a.m., she goes home at 9 p.m. and, you know, spends the time, you know, talking to people in Europe and stuff. And I can't even imagine doing that. I mean, this is a job where you know, I love mathematics. It's great fun. You're interacting with young people, and your time's your own. So for me, academics is just a fantastic job. I mean, you know, it's just really.
And you also get to travel and speak to other mathematicians around the world.
I travel more than I ever want to travel.
Is that right?
Yeah. Travel loses its novelty after the first 20 years. I mean, you know, it really.
Well, finally, how does the crazed Scottish dancing fit into all this? I've been told that you're quite a proponent.
I've always loved sport, and so when I was young, you know, I played all the usual sports, rugby and et cetera, and you know, I just loved them. It was fantastic. And I remember I just injured myself playing squash again, and my wife said, "Oh, why don't you come along and try this Scottish dancing?"
Yeah.
And you know, so I thought, well, you know, she said you don't really need to use your arm because it hurt my shoulder. I was playing squash, so I thought, oh yeah, okay. And when I got there, I just loved it and discovered, in fact, that somehow deep inside me I'm a bit musical, so I could hear the rhythm quite well. So yeah, so I really enjoyed it, and that was about, I guess, 14 years ago. And within about 6 years, I was teaching this stuff. So and writing books of dances, and yeah, so.
Well, there you go.
So it's a traditional area of dancing, but in music going back to the 17th century. But people devising, you know, lots of dances now. And devising a dance is rather like proving a theorem.
I was going to say there's got to be some connection there. There's
Yeah,
patterns, there's rhythms.
you're seeing patterns through space, and you're seeing, you know, you're visualizing. When I'm writing a dance, I'm visualizing what's happened in my own mind and how it, you know, selecting the music so it has the right phrasing and stuff. So there's always that connection between math and music, I think.
Yes, oh, that completely. It's almost like the language of maths, or the sound of maths is music in a way.
Absolutely.
But all you got to do now is introduce some random concepts into your dance routines, and you'll get the two completely together.
I think not.
You think not?
No, we did ballroom dancing. My wife and I was when we were young too. So she had a job, and so for the first time we had some money, so she dragged me along to ballroom dancing. I remember the guy saying, "Oh, you're muscle bound and you don't listen," and traditional ballroom dancing teachers, they're not very inspiring.
No. Hey, look, well, thanks very much to talk to us today.
No
really
problem.
appreciate it.
No problem.
Cheers.